22 minutes. That's how long a 74-year-old Grand Master and his 27-year-old former student fought in a private dojo in Hong Kong. No cameras, no referees, just 30 witnesses watching two legends test each other with full intention. When it began, everyone assumed the master would dominate. When it ended, Ip Man said 4 words that would echo through martial arts history. Now we're equal. This is the story of the night Bruce Lee returned to face his teacher. Not to defeat him, not to prove superiority, but to show what he'd become. Hong Kong, winter 1967. Bruce Lee had been gone for 8 years. He'd left in 1959 at age 18, sent to America by his family to escape the trouble he kept finding in Hong Kong's streets. He'd studied philosophy at the University of Washington, opened martial arts schools in Seattle and Oakland, developed his own system, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist, married an American woman, started teaching Hollywood actors. He'd changed, evolved, become something different from the restless teenager who'd studied Wing Chun under Ip Man from age 13 to 18. Now he was back, visiting family during a break from teaching. Word spread quickly through Hong Kong martial arts circles. Bruce Lee had returned, the prodigal student, the one who'd left Wing Chun behind to create his own system. Some Wing Chun practitioners were curious, others were offended. How dare he abandon the traditional style? How dare he claim he'd found something better than what Ip Man had taught him? Ip Man himself said nothing publicly, but privately he was interested. He'd heard about Jeet Kune Do, about Bruce's philosophy of absorbing what is useful, rejecting what is useless, adding what is specifically your own, about his synthesis of Wing Chun with Western boxing, fencing footwork, wrestling, anything that worked. It contradicted traditional martial arts philosophy. You were supposed to master one system completely, not cherry-pick techniques from many systems. You were supposed to honor your lineage, not break away to create something new. But Ip Man was not a typical traditional master. He was pragmatic. He'd always taught that Wing Chun was about efficiency and directness, not about preserving forms for their own sake. If Bruce had found ways to become more efficient, more direct, Ip Man wanted to see it. The invitation came through a senior student. Would Bruce come to the school one evening? Private meeting, no spectacle, just teacher and student talking about martial arts. Bruce accepted immediately. He arrived on a Thursday evening in December. The school was on the 2nd floor of a building in Kowloon. Narrow stairs, a simple wooden door with Chinese characters. Inside, the familiar smell of the training hall, wood, sweat, liniment oil. 30 people were there, all senior students, men who'd trained with Ip Man for decades, men who'd known Bruce when he was a teenager, cocky and talented, and always getting into street fights. They watched him enter. Some nodded respectfully. Others studied him with skepticism. This was the student who'd left Wing Chun, who claimed to have improved upon it. Ip Man sat in a wooden chair at the back of the room, 74 years old, thin, almost frail-looking, white hair, weathered face, but his eyes were sharp, alert, missing nothing. Bruce approached him and bowed deeply, proper respect, student to teacher. "Sifu," he said quietly, "thank you for inviting me." Ip Man nodded. "You've been gone a long time, 8 years. "Yes, Sifu." "I've heard about your Jeet Kune Do, about your new ideas." "Yes, Sifu." "Some of my students are angry with you. They think you've disrespected Wing Chun by leaving it." Bruce said nothing. What could he say? Ip Man smiled slightly.
"I'm not angry. I'm curious. Show me what you've learned." The room went silent. This wasn't a casual request. This was a challenge, politely phrased but unmistakable. Bruce looked at his former teacher. "Sifu, I didn't come here to challenge you. I came to pay respects." "I know, but I'm asking anyway. I want to see if what you've created is truly better than what I taught you. If it is, I'll be proud. If it isn't, you'll learn something. Either way, we both benefit." He stood slowly, his movements stiff but controlled. Years of training had kept him functional despite his age. "Chi Sao first. Let me feel what you've become." Chi Sao. Sticky hands, the fundamental Wing Chun training method, where two practitioners maintain constant contact, feeling each other's energy and intention through touch rather than sight. Bruce and Ip Man stood facing each other. The senior students formed a circle, watching intently. They raised their arms, made contact at the wrists and forearms, the position Bruce had practiced 10,000 times as a teenager, the foundation of everything Ip Man had taught him. They began to move. Slow at first, feeling each other out, rolling arms, maintaining contact, each testing the other's structure and balance. The senior students watched in silence. They knew Chi Sao intimately. They could see things that outsiders wouldn't notice. Subtle shifts in weight, momentary lapses in structure, intentions telegraphed through muscle tension. What they saw surprised them. Bruce's Chi Sao had changed. It wasn't pure Wing Chun anymore. His stance was different, not the traditional square stance of Wing Chun, but something more mobile, more like a boxer's stance. His weight distribution was different. His responses were different. When Ip Man applied pressure, testing Bruce's structure, Bruce didn't respond with classical Wing Chun techniques. He borrowed the pressure, redirected it, countered from unexpected angles. But it worked. More than worked. It was effective, efficient, direct. Ip Man increased the speed. Bruce matched him. Their arms became a blur of motion, constantly rolling, testing, probing for openings. Ip Man tried a paksal, a slapping hand technique, to clear Bruce's guard. Bruce's arm moved, but not in the traditional defensive response. He slipped the technique while simultaneously closing distance, his free hand already positioned for a strike. Ip Man smiled, adjusted, tried a different attack. Bruce responded differently again. They went faster. The sound of their arms making contact echoed through the room, sharp, rhythmic, like a drumbeat gradually accelerating. Ip Man was 74. He should have been slower, weaker, but decades of mastery compensated for physical decline. His technique was so refined, so efficient, that he needed minimal strength and speed. Bruce was 27, peak physical condition, fast, incredibly fast, but he was using that speed strategically, not wastefully. 3 minutes passed, 5, the intensity never decreased. Then Ip Man did something unexpected. He broke contact, stepped back. "Enough Chi Sao," he said, breathing only slightly harder than normal. "Let's see what you can do with space between us." He gestured to the center of the room. "Free sparring, 20 minutes, no rules except no strikes to injure. I want to see your Jeet Kune Do against Wing Chun. I want to see if what you've created can handle what I taught you." A murmur went through the watching students. This was unprecedented. Ip Man rarely sparred anymore, and never for this long. 20 minutes of continuous sparring would tax even young practitioners. Bruce hesitated. "Sifu, you're—" "I'm old," Ip Man finished, "but not dead, and I want to know the truth. Do you believe in your system, or don't you?" Bruce looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe in it." "Then show me." They moved to the center of the room.
No protective gear, no gloves, just two martial artists in traditional clothing. Ip Man in a simple tang suit, Bruce in dark pants and a fitted shirt. One of the senior students acted as timekeeper. 20 minutes. Begin. They circled each other. Ip Man's footwork was small, efficient, staying in range but not committed. Classical Wing Chun positioning. Bruce's footwork was larger, more dynamic, with the bounce of a boxer, the mobility of a fencer. Bruce struck first, a lead jab, not a Wing Chun straight punch, but a Western boxing jab used to measure distance and disrupt timing. Ip Man slipped it minimally, his head moving just enough, countered with a chain punch, 3 rapid strikes down the center line. Bruce's hands intercepted, not blocking, redirecting. His footwork pivoted him off the line of attack while his hands cleared the path. They reset, circled. Ip Man pressed forward, using Wing Chun's forward pressure philosophy. Constant attack, constant threat, making the opponent react rather than act. Bruce gave ground, but strategically, not retreating, repositioning, drawing Ip Man forward, then countering from angles. A hook kick from Bruce, borrowed from savate, the French martial art. Ip Man had never seen Bruce throw kicks like this. He jammed it at the knee, neutralizing the technique before it developed power. Bruce adjusted immediately, threw a low side kick instead, targeting Ip Man's lead leg, trying to damage mobility. Ip Man checked it with his shin, absorbed the impact, closed distance immediately while Bruce's leg was still extended. They were in close range now, Wing Chun's preferred distance. Ip Man's hands worked rapidly, trapping, striking, controlling. Bruce defended, but he was on the defensive for the first time. 5 minutes had passed. Bruce created space with a push kick, using his leg as a piston to shove Ip Man back without committing to a full technique. Reset the distance to where his boxing and footwork gave him advantages. Ip Man came forward again, patient, conserving energy, not wasting motion. Bruce feinted high, went low with a body shot, a shovel hook borrowed from boxing. Ip Man's elbow dropped to protect his ribs, but the punch still got through partially. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to make a point. Ip Man nodded slightly, acknowledgement. Then he pressed forward with renewed intensity. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Both men were breathing harder now, sweat on their faces, but neither slowed down, neither backed off. The watching students had gone completely silent. This wasn't a demonstration, this wasn't a performance, this was real. Two masters testing each other honestly, holding back just enough not to injure, but not holding back the intention, the technique, the strategy. Bruce was faster, younger, more athletic. His techniques came from multiple systems, giving him more tools, more options. But Ip Man was more efficient, more economical. Every movement had purpose. Every technique flowed into the next with no wasted energy. And his understanding of distance and timing was so refined that he could compensate for his reduced physical attributes. At the 18-minute mark, Bruce landed a clean, straight right hand, pure Western boxing that snapped Ip Man's head back. Not full power, but clean, undeniable. Ip Man recovered immediately, closed the distance, landed a rapid chain punch combination that pushed Bruce back 3 steps. 20 minutes, the timekeeper called it. Both men stopped immediately, stepped back, bowed to each other. The room erupted, not in cheers, too much respect for that, but in animated conversation. The senior students had just witnessed something historic. Bruce and Ip Man stood in the center, both breathing hard, both sweating, both looking at each other with expressions that were difficult to read. Ip Man gestured to his chair. Bruce brought him water. They sat, teacher and student, while the senior students formed a respectful distance around them. For a long moment, neither spoke. They just breathed, recovered, processed what had just happened. Finally, Ip Man broke the silence. "Your Jeet Kune Do," he said quietly. "It works." Bruce said nothing, waited. "It's not Wing Chun," Ip Man continued, "but it's not supposed to be. You took the principles I taught you, efficiency, directness, simplicity, and applied them beyond Wing Chun's traditional boundaries. You synthesized, evolved." He paused, taking a sip of water. "When you were young, I told you that Wing Chun was about adapting to your opponent, not forcing techniques. You took that lesson further than I did. You adapted Wing Chun itself, made it your own." "Sifu, I didn't abandon Wing Chun," Bruce said. "Wing Chun is the foundation of everything I do. But I found that—" "You found that sticking to one system limited you," Ip Man finished. "You're right, it does." This shocked the watching students, their master acknowledging limits to Wing Chun. Ip Man smiled at their expressions. Truth is more important than tradition. Bruce has found truths that Wing Chun alone didn't teach him. That doesn't diminish Wing Chun, it expands it. He turned back to Bruce. 22 minutes ago, when we started, I was curious if you were wasting your potential by leaving traditional training. Now I know you weren't. You were fulfilling it." He stood slowly, his body stiff from the exertion, extended his hand to Bruce, not in a traditional martial arts gesture, but in a Western handshake, acknowledgement between equals. "Now we're equal," Ip Man said. "Not in age, not in experience, but in understanding. You understand martial arts as deeply as I do, differently, but just as deeply. I can teach you no more. From this moment, you're not my student, you're my peer." Bruce stood, took his hand. His eyes were wet. This recognition from his teacher, the man who'd shaped his entire approach to martial arts, meant more than any trophy, any film role, any public acclaim. "Sifu, I will always be your student," Bruce said quietly. "In your heart, yes," Ip Man agreed, "but in martial arts, no. You've graduated. You're a master in your own right now. Teach your own students, develop your own system. But remember, stay humble, stay curious. The moment you think you've learned everything is the moment you stop growing." Bruce nodded. The lesson he'd learned from Ip Man years ago, now reinforced at this crucial moment. The senior students approached. One by one, they bowed to Bruce, not as a former junior student, but as an equal, recognition that he'd proven himself, that his path, while different from theirs, was valid. That night in December 1967 became a quiet legend among those who witnessed it. The story didn't spread widely. No one publicized it. The 30 students who were there kept it among themselves, shared it only with close students in later years. But the impact was profound. Bruce Lee returned to America with renewed confidence. His teacher, the man whose approval meant everything, had acknowledged that Jeet Kune Do was not a betrayal, but an evolution. That synthesis was not weakness, but strength. He continued developing his system, training actors like Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, teaching serious martial artists, and eventually breaking into film in a way that would make him a global icon. Ip Man continued teaching Wing Chun in Hong Kong until his death in 1972. He never publicly spoke about his sparring session with Bruce Lee, but those close to him said he was proud of Bruce, proud that his student had taken the foundation he'd been given and built something new upon it. In 1973, a year after Ip Man's death, Bruce Lee died suddenly in Hong Kong.
He was 32 years old, too young, too sudden. The world lost someone who was just beginning to show his full potential. But in that private dojo in 1967, for 22 minutes, teacher and student had met as equals, had tested each other honestly, had shown mutual respect through combat rather than words. The senior students who witnessed it would tell the story decades later when they were old themselves. Everyone thought the master would dominate, they'd say. Everyone assumed Bruce Lee couldn't match Ip Man's skill. But we watched them fight for 22 minutes, real fighting, real technique, real intention, and it was even, balanced, neither dominated. At the end, Ip Man said, "Now we're equal. Not you surpassed me, not you still have much to learn. Equal." That was the greatest compliment a master can give a student. Recognition that the student has walked the path fully, that the teaching has been completed. The legacy of that night wasn't about who was better. That was never the point. The legacy was about evolution, about honoring tradition while transcending it, about the relationship between teacher and student transforming into the relationship of peers. Ip Man had taught Bruce Lee that martial arts was about honest expression, not rigid adherence to forms. Bruce Lee had proven he'd learned that lesson by creating something new that still honored the principles Ip Man had taught him. And in 22 minutes of intense, honest combat, they'd shown each other and the 30 witnesses what martial arts at its highest level looked like. Not performance, not demonstration, not ego, just two masters testing truth, and finding, in the end, that they stood on equal ground.